On the night of Thursday, the 21st of April, 2016, BBC One broadcast a documentary called Elizabeth at 90, A Family Tribute. It ran for 90 minutes. It was Queen Elizabeth II's 90th birthday, and somewhere in the second half of the program, the camera cut to a woman who had not appeared on British television in a speaking role for more than 20 years. The documentary had been made by John Bridcut, whose company Crux Productions had been given something no royal documentary filmmaker had been offered in the modern era: the complete collection of the royal family's personal ciné films, home movies shot across generations by Prince Philip, by the Queen herself, by King George VI, and by Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother. Much of this footage had never been publicly shown, some of it dated to the 1920s, when the future queen was barely old enough to walk. Some of it dated to the 1930s, when the two York daughters, Elizabeth and Margaret, played at Royal Lodge while their father was still the Duke of York, and no one had yet fully grasped what the abdication of Edward VIII would mean for the elder girl's future. The footage shows children being children together, running in gardens, playing at being horses, singing, doing the unselfconscious things that children do before destiny settles on them. The format Bridcut constructed around this archive was deliberately intimate. He filmed members of the royal family watching the home movies and responding to what they saw. The Guardian's television critic Sam Wollaston, reviewing the documentary the following morning, compared the result to a royal version of Gogglebox. Each contributor sat in a domestic setting and reacted to footage they had not, in many cases, seen before, or had not seen in decades. The idea wasn't to produce a formal tribute, but to capture something closer to genuine recognition, what it looks like when someone watches footage of people they loved and tries to say what it means while the feeling is still present. The Prince of Wales narrated the film and appeared on camera alongside the Queen, watching the films together. The confirmed cast, as documented in the program's own records, included Princess Anne, Prince William, Prince Harry, the Duke of Kent, Princess Alexandra, the writer and royal cousin Margaret Rhodes, and Queen Margrethe II of Denmark. And there was a woman listed on screen under her pre-marriage name, Sarah Armstrong Jones, niece, the only daughter of Princess Margaret. By the production company's own account, nearly 10 million British viewers watched. Lady Sarah Frances Elizabeth Chatto, née Armstrong Jones, was born at 8:20 in the morning on the 1st of May, 1964, at Kensington Palace. She was the second child and only daughter of Princess Margaret, Countess of Snowdon, and Anthony Armstrong Jones, the first Earl of Snowdon. At birth, she was 7th in line to the throne. As of 2026, she is 29th. She does not undertake public duties and holds no official royal role. She was educated at Bedale School, leaving with a single A-level in art, then at the Camberwell School of Art, then at the Royal Academy Schools. She spent 2 years in India with her father in the 1980s while he photographed the production of A Passage to India, and on returning to England, enrolled in a 2-year course in textile and fabric design at Middlesex Polytechnic. She has exhibited her paintings under the name Sarah Armstrong Jones at the Redfern Gallery in London since 1995. Her work has won the Winsor and Newton Prize and the Creswick Landscape Prize. In 2004, she became vice president of the Royal Ballet. Her mother had been its president, and in 2024, she became the Royal Ballet's president. On the 14th of July, 1994, she married the actor Daniel Chatto at St. Stephen's Walbrook in the City of London, in a ceremony officiated by the Reverend Chad Vera, founder of the Samaritans. Their 2 sons, Samuel, now a sculptor based in West Sussex, and Arthur, who served with the Royal Marines, were born in 1996 and 1999 respectively. She is described in press profiles across decades in essentially the same terms. Tatler, in 2026, called her creative, loyal, and famously low-key. The South China Morning Post, in a profile from 2022, described her as very unassuming, shy, and almost embarrassed, with no grandeur at all. Town and Country, tracking her appearances at royal events in 2026, characterized her as maintaining a consistently low-key, non-speaking role in royal life. She has no social media presence, no official website, no press interview on record in her adult life. When the BBC documentary aired, she had not appeared on British television in a speaking role for more than 20 years. Before Sarah Chatto appeared on screen, the documentary had shown footage of her mother as a child. The ciné films that John Bridcut had been given access to included material from the 1930s. Princess Elizabeth and Princess Margaret as small girls at Royal Lodge, in the years before the abdication turned Elizabeth's life into something entirely other than what had been expected of it. The academic analysis of the documentary's format, from a PhD thesis on British Heritage Television published at the University of Leeds in 2018, observed that the film placed contributors in the position of reacting to this footage in real time, a structure that was deliberately designed to produce something more spontaneous than a prepared tribute. What you see in a contributor's face, watching footage of people who are gone, isn't a performance, or not only a performance. Wollaston described the effect of the childhood footage in his morning review. The young Elizabeth, as yet unburdened by her destiny, singing happily with her younger sister. Playing and singing together, he noted, little girls, playing at being horses, naturally, in footage he described as genuinely touching, even if the elder of the two women now watching it appeared unmoved. The younger sister in the footage was Princess Margaret. By 2016, she had been dead for 14 years. The only surviving person in the world who had grown up watching those two women together, who had grown up as the daughter of one of them, who had been in the room through both of their lives in a way that no one else alive had been, was the woman the on-screen caption identified as niece. When it was Sarah's turn in the film, she sat in what appeared to be a private drawing room. Medium close-up, soft light from what looked like a window to one side. A domestic space, not a public one. She was 51. Her dark hair was worn down. She didn't begin by acknowledging the camera or establishing her credentials. She began where people begin when they are talking about something they know precisely and personally, without the need to situate it. Her first sentence described the footage shown earlier in the documentary, the 1930s home movies of her mother and her aunt as small girls, playing and singing together. Wollaston, reviewing in the morning, wrote that she does seem genuinely moved by seeing old footage of her mother and aunt as little girls. Viewers posting to the Royal Forum's discussion thread on the night of the broadcast recorded the same impression. The thread had opened on the 12th of April, before the documentary even aired, and on the night of the 21st, its members were posting in real time as the program played. "So nice to hear from Sarah Chatto. She spoke so beautifully," wrote one viewer, in the immediate minutes after her contribution aired. "A lovely documentary and very personal in places," wrote another, particularly witnessing Sarah Chatto and the Duke of Kent genuinely moved by what they see in the footage. A third, "I loved hearing from Sarah Chatto. These aren't analytical conclusions. They are the unedited responses of people watching live television and typing simultaneously, which means they registered something in her contribution before they had time to formulate what they had registered." Her second sentence described, by the consistent account of viewers who watched it, her memory of the two women, her mother and her aunt, together at family gatherings in her own childhood. The 70s. She would have been a child, growing up in Kensington Palace with her brother David, spending holidays at Sandringham and Balmoral, watching the Queen and Princess Margaret as sisters in the private spaces of the family, as simply sisters, in the way they had been since the 1930s footage showed them being simply children. Her third sentence, the one the audience noticed, and that has been independently reproduced in online discussions across the decades since broadcast, was brief. No press review from April 2016 quoted her verbatim. No official subtitle file has been made publicly available, but the phrasing that has been consistently reproduced in audience memory across YouTube comments and forum posts and online discussions over 10 years was something close to, "We love her absolutely." Whether those were the exact words, in precisely that order, isn't something the public record can confirm from a transcript. What can be established is that the audience has been writing this down independently ever since. The other contributors were doing something different. Wollaston's review captured the register of each contribution with the economy of someone who watches a great deal of television and knows when something is genuine and when something is skilled. Charles says wonderful a lot, he wrote, which isn't a criticism but an observation about register. A man who has spent his entire adult life occupying a formally ambiguous position between son and heir, who has found a vocabulary that can honor the public institution and the private relationship without confusing them, and for whom wonderful is the word that does both things at once. Anne, Wollaston wrote, is mainly sour, which is, again, accurate without being unkind. She is the family member who does not perform affection because she has never needed to, whose directness is its own form of engagement, who scowls at footage she disapproves of and makes no apology for it. William and Harry attempt broly banter, trading observations about archival photographs of themselves as babies, joking about who looked more like a girl. The Duke of Kent points out himself and other dukes. The Queen says very little, Wollaston noted, and appears most interested in and moved by the dogs, of which there are hundreds, and the decommissioning of Britannia. These are all honest accounts of a relationship with the Queen. The Queen's children have been with her their entire lives. Their relationship with her is the permanent backdrop of their existence, the one thing in their lives that has always simply been. Charles's wonderful is the word of a man who has never not had access to the person he is describing. Anne's bluntness is the bluntness of someone who has never needed to explain why the relationship matters, because it has always been the condition of everything else. They are speaking about the Queen in the way you speak about the person who was simply always there, which is to say, in language that assumes the relationship rather than naming it. The audience observation, independently made across multiple platforms and multiple years, is that among these contributions, Sarah Chatto's used the word love in direct characterization of her relationship with the Queen. Whether any other contributor used the word in a passing or formulaic construction can't be confirmed without a full transcript, and that limitation is real. But the consistent pattern of audience response across a decade identifies the same distinction, that the register of her contribution was different, that the word appeared in hers in a way that distinguished it from the contributions around it. On the Jewelry Journey's YouTube channel, which covers royal jewelry and draws substantial audiences within the royal watching community, a comment about the documentary reportedly circulated in which a viewer described the scene specifically. Sarah watching the home movie footage with visible emotion, and then, when the family members delivered their messages to the Queen, Lady Sarah is the only one who talks of love. The comment has been cited in subsequent online discussions about the documentary with enough regularity that it has become part of the informal record of what that 45 seconds contained. Princess Margaret died at King Edward VII's Hospital in London on the 9th of February 2002. She was 71. Lady Sarah Chatto was at her mother's side. 7 weeks later, on the 30th of March, the Queen Mother died at Royal Lodge in Windsor. She was 101. The Queen lost her mother and her only sibling in the same year, 49 days apart, the two people around whom her sense of private family had been built since childhood. For Sarah Chatto, the arithmetic was different but the weight was comparable. The person who had organized her experience of the royal world since birth was gone at 37. She was a wife, the mother of 2 young children, a painter building a career, and now, in the terms the institution would recognize, neither closer to nor further from the center of it than before. The formal position remained unchanged. What had changed was the relationship that had made the institution feel like family. The Queen's relationship with her niece across the 14 years between Margaret's death and the filming of the documentary is characterized in press accounts from that period consistently and across multiple sources. Multiple outlets describe the relationship as especially close, that Sarah held a special place in the Queen's heart, that she was the Queen's beloved or much-adored niece. She attended Christmas gatherings at Sandringham. She was present at Balmoral. She appeared at major family occasions, the Platinum Jubilee in June 2022, Prince Philip's funeral in April 2021, in the way inner circle family members appear at occasions that require them. The word close appears across enough independent sources, at enough remove from each other, to describe something that was real and sustained. No published biographer articulates it more precisely than that. Robert Hardman's Queen of Our Times, published in 2022, does not use the phrase substitute mother in relation to Lady Sarah Chatto. Neither does Sally Bedell Smith's Elizabeth the Queen, from 2012, nor Tina Brown's The Palace Papers from the same year as Hardman's. The relationship is documented in its observable form, attendance, proximity, described closeness, but its private character has never been publicly stated by either of the two people inside it, which is what makes the 2016 documentary significant as a document. The format placed each contributor in the position of answering, on camera, a single implicit question. What is this person to you? The context in which Sarah was answering that question, 14 years after her mother's death, filmed in what the documentary's production notes describe as a relaxed domestic setting designed to produce authentic familial response, was a context in which the relationship she was describing had a history she had been living quietly for more than a decade, without being asked to articulate it. She spoke for less than a minute. The structural argument for why the word love carries more weight in her contribution than it would in another contributor's requires acknowledging first that the counter-argument is legitimate. Royal discourse uses the language of love regularly. The Prince of Wales, at the beacon lighting ceremony in Windsor on the same night the documentary aired, spoke publicly of the love and affection in which the Queen is held throughout this country and the Commonwealth. The word isn't unusual in British royal public communication. The collective pronoun, we, that the audience's memory places in the reported phrase, is formally less intimate than the singular. It could be read as speaking on behalf of the family broadly, rather than naming something personal to herself. A more specifically personal declaration would more typically use I. The we could be deliberate distancing, a way of making a public statement without making it private. All of this is structurally fair, and the absence of a verified transcript makes any close reading of the specific words provisional. But the counter to that counter is also structural. The Queen's 4 children had been with her their entire lives. The relationship was the permanent condition of their existence, present before they had language to describe it. The word love in that context would be as assumed as the air. What Sarah was doing when she used the word, if the audience's consistent memory is accurate, was naming something that required naming because it had a beginning she was alive to witness. Her relationship with the Queen in its current form had a starting date. It had been built from what was given to her in a hospital room in February 2002, and it had been sustained across 14 years without either of them saying so in public. The children of the Queen described her in the register of people who have always had access to the person they are describing, the language of assumption. Sarah described her in the language of someone who understands, from experience, that the person can be lost, and who, perhaps because of that, named what the relationship was while there was still time to name it. Queen Elizabeth II died at Balmoral Castle on the 8th of September 2022, at 3:10 in the afternoon. The public announcement came at 6:30 that evening. Lady Sarah Chatto issued no public statement. Hello magazine, reporting on the 12th of September, noted that she had not been seen since news of the monarch's death on Thursday, the 8th of September, and was yet to release a statement. The only statement ever issued in her name through official channels following a major family bereavement was a joint message with her brother David Armstrong Jones in February 2002, after Princess Margaret died. A brief expression of gratitude to those who had sent condolences, posted on the royal family's official website. No equivalent statement appeared on that website after September 2022. On the 19th of September, she attended the committal service at St. George's Chapel, Windsor. The BBC confirmed her presence at the service with her husband Daniel Chatto and their two sons, Samuel and Arthur. She was photographed in black. She was described as somber. She didn't speak. In the months and years that followed, she continued to appear at royal occasions in the manner she always had. Present, loyal, without comment. She attended the coronation of King Charles III on the 6th of May 2023 as a guest. She appeared at Royal Ascot. She attended Wimbledon. In April 2026, she was present at a viewing of the final design for the National Memorial to Queen Elizabeth II, alongside King Charles and Queen Camilla. At each of these occasions, she was photographed. At none of them did she speak on camera or issue a statement. No documentary tribute to the Queen produced since her death has included Lady Sarah Chatto's participation. The commemorative documentary broadcast in the immediate aftermath of the Queen's death didn't include her. She didn't appear in subsequent tribute productions across 2023 or 2024. She hasn't given an interview to mark the first anniversary of the Queen's death, or the second. She hasn't written a tribute essay. She hasn't contributed a statement to any of the memorial efforts the country has organized in the years since September 2022. The 45 seconds in April 2016 is, by the documented record, the entire public record of what she was willing to say about the woman she is describing. Two readings of this silence are both consistent with what the record shows, and they don't resolve into each other. The first is that the silence is simply who she has always been. She went more than 20 years before the 2016 documentary without appearing in a speaking role on British television, and she has gone the years since without doing so again. Her pattern of privacy predates the Queen's death by decades and extends past it with no apparent change in character. The 2016 appearance was the anomaly, a single departure from an otherwise unbroken practice, made in a specific format, about a specific person, in a context she was apparently willing to trust with something she had not said in public before and hasn't said in public since. She returned afterward to the silence that had always been her default position. The second is that the silence in September 2022 is the form grief has taken. That when the person who occupied a particular place in your life, the person the relationship you needed to build at 37 was built with, is gone, no public statement exists that is adequate to the actual loss. That no interview contains it without diminishing it. That the 45 seconds in 2016 was already at the outer limit of what she was prepared to say in public about this relationship, and that limit holds more firmly now that the reason for the limit is dead. The record does not distinguish between these readings. Private people have always been private, and the grief of a private person and the lifelong discretion of a private person look identical from the outside. Lady Sarah Chatto turned 62 on the 1st of May this year. The documentary is archived online, and people have kept returning to it, specifically to the section with her contribution. On the night of April 21, 2016, the viewers who posted real-time responses to the Royal Forums thread registered something in her 45 seconds and said so before they had time to formulate what they had registered. In the years since, viewers who found the documentary at different points, after the Queen's death, after the anniversaries, through YouTube searches for whatever they were looking for in the footage, arrived independently at the same section and the same observation. Multiple people, across multiple platforms, across a decade, writing down the same thing about the same moment. The window the documentary opened was 45 seconds wide. It hasn't been opened again, not by any demonstrated intent of the person who controls it, who has shown across more than a decade that she has said what she was willing to say and has nothing to add. The audience that watched on the night of broadcast counted the contributors and moved on. The audience watching today counts 1. The others were describing the Queen in the register of people who had always had access to her. A mother, a sovereign, a presence their entire lives had been organized around. Sarah was doing something else. She was speaking, in the only way she has ever spoken in public, about a relationship that had a beginning she could name, that had been built from grief, and that the word she reached for at the end of 45 seconds was the word the record says she used. The closest she has ever come in public to saying what the Queen was to her, this is what it looked like. A drawing room, soft light, less than a minute. The footage of 2 small girls in the 1930s playing and singing together, both of them gone now. And the word she chose to say about the one she had, for 14 years, been learning to call her own. Subscribe for more stories like this.